By 1980, America had entered a new era. But instead of developing smarter, safer cars, many American manufacturers chose the cheapest path forward. A tragic class of cars that looked modern, but were barely safe. Some had unreliable brakes, others had explosive fuel systems, and many were so hastily assembled that basic crash protection was secondary. Whether due to poor design, corporate cost-cutting, or engineering gimmicks, they killed people in many cases. Here are the 10 most dangerously defective American cars sold in 1980.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 10. The Mercury Zephyr was essentially a rebadged version of the Ford Fairmont, both of which shared a platform known as the Ford Fox platform. While the Fairmont had moderate success, the Zephyr was marketed as a more premium alternative in Mercury's lineup, which positioned it to be a slightly higher-end compact vehicle. Despite this premium positioning, the Zephyr shared almost every mechanical component and design flaw with the Fairmont. But the Mercury model did little to distinguish itself. It wasn't significantly different in terms of features or performance, yet it was priced higher than its Ford counterpart. Consumers weren't buying into the concept of a slightly pricier Fairmont, which put the Zephyr in a tough spot from the beginning. One of the primary criticisms of the 1980 Mercury Zephyr was its overall build quality. The Fox platform, while versatile and inexpensive to manufacture, was not designed with long-term durability in mind. The body of the Zephyr was remarkably flimsy, and this was immediately noticeable when driving the car. The car's construction lacked the kind of reinforcement that would give it a solid, safe feel on the road. Unlike some of its competitors in the compact car market, the Zephyr didn't inspire confidence in its structural integrity. The body panels were thin, and the frame felt inadequate, especially when compared to more robust designs from manufacturers like Honda or Toyota, who were beginning to dominate the American market with their well-built and reliable models like the Civic and Corolla. Another critical flaw in the Zephyr's design was its braking performance. With a lightweight and underwhelming structure, it was already a car that lacked a sense of roadworthiness, but the braking system only worsened the situation. The Zephyr struggled with braking efficiency. Its drum brakes, which were standard on the base model, were prone to fade quickly and offered limited stopping power, especially in emergency situations. This issue was exacerbated by the fact that the Zephyr, like the Fairmont, had a rear-wheel drive configuration. Rear-wheel drive cars are generally considered to provide a sportier driving experience, but they also require a higher level of precision in brake engineering, especially when compared to front-wheel drive counterparts. In the case of the Zephyr, the lack of an adequately refined braking system only made it harder to control in wet or emergency conditions, making the car feel even less secure and unstable than it already did. Although the Zephyr had some semblance of style, it didn't offer much in terms of driving pleasure. The handling was uninspired, to say the least. The suspension system was basic, with minimal attention paid to ride quality or cornering capability. Driving the Zephyr felt like a chore, especially when compared to more refined imports that were designed to provide a balance of comfort and agility. The power steering in the Zephyr was also underwhelming, offering little to no feedback to the driver, which made it harder to engage with the car. While the powertrain itself wasn't atrocious, the driving experience was notably bland, which contributed to its eventual obscurity. Under the hood, the 1980 Mercury Zephyr offered a few engine options, none of which were particularly exciting. The base model came with a 2.3-liter four-cylinder engine, which was a reliable but sluggish option. There was also a V6 engine available, but this did little to improve performance in a meaningful way. The V6 engine offered a bit more horsepower, but it did not provide the kind of acceleration that would make the car feel engaging to drive. The issue with both engines was that they simply didn't deliver enough power to make the car feel peppy, nor did they provide the fuel efficiency that was expected from a compact car in the 1980s. Given the era's fuel consciousness, buyers were seeking more than just basic economy. They wanted efficiency and fun in a small package. Unfortunately, the Zephyr failed to deliver on both fronts. The 1980 Mercury Zephyr was short-lived in the public consciousness. While its base model came with a relatively low price tag, buyers could get more value from other competitors that didn't skimp on safety or performance. Number 9. The Cadillac Seville marked an important shift for the brand. Prior to its release, Cadillac had built its reputation on large, imposing luxury cars such as the Fleetwood and Eldorado. However, as the 1970s drew to a close, American buyers' tastes began to change. The global automotive market was becoming increasingly influenced by European manufacturers, particularly brands like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, which produced more compact, refined sedans. American luxury buyers were looking for something more nimble, more efficient, and perhaps even a bit more understated than the large land yacht-like Cadillacs of the past. In response to this market shift, Cadillac designed the Seville to be a more European-style luxury sedan that could compete with the likes of the Mercedes-Benz 280 and BMW 528i. The Seville was smaller, sportier, and more refined, featuring a 4.1-liter V8 engine and a front-wheel drive layout that was unique for Cadillac at the time. Despite its forward-looking design and the ambition behind it, the Seville faced significant challenges right from the start. The car's weight, stability issues, and inadequate braking system would quickly tarnish its reputation. One of the first issues with the 1980 Cadillac Seville was its excessive weight. While it was marketed as a more compact luxury car compared to its larger Cadillac siblings, it was still much heavier than its European competitors. The Seville's curb weight was well over 4,000 pounds, considerable for a sedan of its size, especially given that European sedans in the same class often weighed hundreds of pounds less. This extra weight came with significant drawbacks, especially in terms of handling and stability. The Seville's chassis was not designed to handle the added weight effectively. This made it feel sluggish in tight corners, prone to understeering, and generally less responsive than the European sedans Cadillac was hoping to emulate. The weight distribution was also problematic, as the Seville was front-heavy, with much of its weight concentrated at the front of the car due to the V8 engine and front-wheel drive layout. This made the car feel unbalanced, particularly during sudden maneuvers or when driving at higher speeds. The front-heavy design of the 1980 Cadillac Seville was another significant flaw. While front-wheel drive had become an attractive layout for many vehicles due to its space-saving advantages and improved traction in adverse conditions, the Seville's design did not take full advantage of these benefits. The weight distribution was skewed in favor of the front end, making the car prone to nosediving during braking or cornering. This also meant that the Seville struggled to maintain stability during emergency maneuvers or quick lane changes. Drivers could feel the car's front end dive and shift as they braked sharply or made sudden movements. This was particularly problematic because Cadillac marketed the Seville as a luxury car, and one of the hallmarks of luxury vehicles is the feeling of effortless control and refinement. The Seville, unfortunately, failed to provide that experience, instead leaving drivers feeling as though they were struggling to maintain control. As a result, while the Seville was aimed at buyers who sought a more refined, compact sedan, it failed to deliver a driving experience that would rival its European competitors in terms of handling precision or driving comfort. Another crucial flaw of the 1980 Cadillac Seville was its braking system. The Seville's braking performance was underwhelming and at times downright dangerous. Despite being a luxury car, the Seville was equipped with drum brakes on the rear and disc brakes on the front, a configuration that was starting to feel outdated in the late 1960s, late 1970s, and early 1980s, especially for a vehicle of its price and status. The braking system's lack of responsiveness became especially apparent in emergency situations. In high-stress situations where quick stops are needed, the Seville's brakes often failed to provide sufficient stopping power. The drum brakes, which were inefficient and prone to overheating, couldn't keep up with the car's weight and driving demands, leading to long stopping distances and, at times, brake fade. Even with the disc brakes up front, the overall braking performance of the Seville did not inspire confidence. A luxury sedan is expected to deliver not only a smooth, comfortable ride, but also a high level of safety, something that the Seville's braking system failed to provide. When faced with an urgent stop, drivers of the Seville would often feel like they were in a much less controlled vehicle than what was promised. Number 8, the AMC Spirit was introduced in 1979 as a replacement for the aging AMC Gremlin and was marketed as a compact car that combined the economy of smaller vehicles with the spirit of American motoring. The Spirit was intended to offer a more modern, fuel-efficient car to appeal to drivers who wanted something smaller, more practical, and more affordable than full-size sedans. While the AMC Spirit shared much of its platform with the AMC Hornet, an older compact model, the Spirit was designed to be more modern and youthful. It offered a range of options, including an inline-4 engine or a 6-cylinder, with relatively low base prices, making it appealing to budget-conscious buyers. Unfortunately, despite its good intentions, the AMC Spirit failed to deliver in critical areas, particularly in terms of safety. The model's short lifespan and reputation for substandard crashworthiness would haunt it throughout its brief run on the market. One of the most significant safety issues with the 1980 AMC Spirit was its poor rollover protection. The car's design was not built to withstand the forces involved in a rollover, and this vulnerability was especially dangerous in the event of a collision or evasive maneuver. At the time, rollover protection was not as heavily prioritized as it would become in later years, but the Spirit demonstrated how inadequate design could put drivers and passengers at risk. The car's high center of gravity, combined with narrow track width, made it prone to tip over when pushed to its limits in a sharp turn or if involved in a side impact crash. In crash tests and real-world incidents, the Spirit's structural integrity failed to adequately protect occupants in rollover situations. This issue became particularly dangerous for a vehicle marketed as an affordable compact, where safety should have been a primary concern. Rollover accidents have long been known to be especially dangerous, as the likelihood of occupant injury increases significantly when a vehicle flips. The AMC Spirit's lack of robust rollover protection contributed directly to its poor safety ratings, and it was quickly recognized as a risky option for drivers. Another critical flaw in the 1980 AMC Spirit was its seatbelt design, which by modern standards was woefully inadequate. Seatbelts are one of the most fundamental safety features in any vehicle, and during the late 1970s and early 1980s, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration (NHTSA) was beginning to push for better safety standards in passenger vehicles. However, AMC did not meet these rising expectations with the Spirit. The car was equipped with lap belts and shoulder belts that were poorly designed and failed to provide adequate protection in the event of a collision. The lap belts in particular were especially problematic, as they lacked the necessary tensioners or adjusters to keep them snug in the event of an accident. This design flaw meant that, during a crash, the seat belt would often fail to restrain occupants properly, leading to an increased risk of injury. In addition to this, the shoulder belts often felt uncomfortable or cumbersome, leading many drivers and passengers to neglect using them altogether. For a compact car that was supposed to be affordable and practical, the Spirit's seatbelt system showed a lack of attention to the core safety needs of its users. By failing to offer a modern and effective seatbelt system, the 1980 AMC Spirit presented an unsafe driving experience, even for everyday situations. This flaw further diminished the Spirit's reputation for reliability and safety in the eyes of consumers. In addition to the seatbelt issues and poor rollover protection, the 1980 AMC Spirit also suffered from subpar crash energy management. Crash energy management refers to a car's ability to absorb and redirect the force of a collision in a way that minimizes the impact on the occupants. The Spirit's structure was simply not equipped to handle the stresses of a moderate-speed collision without transferring excessive forces to the passengers. The Spirit's front-end design and overall structural integrity were insufficient in crash tests, and its lack of crumple zones made it less effective at dissipating crash energy. Unlike more modern vehicles that have been designed with crumple zones and reinforced structures to mitigate the impact on passengers, the AMC Spirit was far behind in terms of protection during an accident. In real-world crashes, this became a major issue, as occupants would often experience much higher levels of force in a collision compared to more modern cars. This lack of crash energy management meant that the Spirit was prone to injuries and fatalities, especially in the event of high-speed accidents or collisions with larger vehicles. Number 7. First, let's set the stage. The Chevrolet Caprice had been in production since the early 1960s, and by the 1980s had firmly established itself as a staple of full-size sedans in the United States. The The 1980 model year marked the Caprice's second generation in its current form, and the car was designed to maintain Chevrolet's reputation for offering spacious, comfortable vehicles. The Caprice was powered by a variety of engines, including the V6 and V8 options, and was available in several trims, including the Classic, Brougham, and the Classic Estate Wagon. With its large dimensions, plush interiors, and a wide range of features, the 1980 Chevrolet Caprice was intended to appeal to drivers who prioritize comfort and road presence. However, despite its design emphasis on luxury and space, the Caprice's safety features were less than impressive, especially when compared to newer, more advanced designs emerging in the 1980s. One of the most glaring safety shortcomings of the 1980 Chevrolet Caprice was its lack of crumple zones. In the 1970s and early 1980s, automakers were beginning to understand the importance of designing vehicles that could absorb and dissipate the energy from a collision. Crumple zones, areas of a car that are designed to deform upon impact to absorb crash forces, became standard in many vehicles during this period. However, the 1980 Chevrolet Caprice was not equipped with crumple zones that could effectively absorb crash forces. Its sturdy body-on-frame construction made the car tough, but this traditional design was not conducive to modern safety features. In the event of a crash, rather than the vehicle's front and rear sections absorbing the energy of the impact, the full force of the collision would be transmitted to the cabin, posing a greater risk to the passengers. The lack of crumple zones in the Caprice meant that, in the event of a moderate or severe crash, the car's passengers were more likely to suffer injuries compared to vehicles equipped with better crash energy management systems. While the Caprice was built to be a durable and long-lasting vehicle, its rigid construction ultimately reduced its ability to protect occupants in the event of a collision. Another significant safety concern with the 1980 Chevrolet Caprice was its poor rollover resistance. Full-size sedans like the Caprice were generally not designed with rollover protection in mind. At the time, rollover accidents were not as heavily studied or prioritized in safety testing as they are today. However, this oversight became more apparent as the Caprice's design flaws became evident. The Caprice's large size combined with its soft suspension created a dangerous combination in terms of rollover resistance. The soft suspension, which contributed to the vehicle's smooth and comfortable ride, also made the Caprice more prone to body roll during sharp turns or evasive maneuvers. When the car's body rolled excessively, the risk of tipping over increased significantly, especially in higher speed turns or during sudden changes in direction. Unlike some of its smaller counterparts, the Caprice lacked modern stability control systems and strong rollover prevention features. The car's size and weight, though beneficial in some respects, became a liability when the vehicle was pushed beyond its handling limits. This design flaw in the 1980 Chevrolet Caprice made it more susceptible to rollover accidents, which are among the most dangerous types of collisions for occupants. The 1980 Chevrolet Caprice was designed with comfort as a priority, and its soft suspension system was a major contributor to this. The suspension system allowed the car to glide over uneven road surfaces, offering a smooth ride for passengers. However, this focus on comfort came at a significant safety cost. The soft suspension compromised the vehicle's handling and stability, making it more prone to excessive body roll and turns. This contributed to the car's poor rollover resistance, as discussed earlier. In addition, the soft suspension led to longer stopping distances and a reduced ability to respond quickly to emergency situations. In the event of a sudden maneuver or hard braking, the Caprice's soft suspension would cause the car to squat or sway, which could impair the driver's ability to maintain control. While the ride quality of the Caprice was highly praised for comfort, the soft suspension was a significant detractor when it came to vehicle safety. The lack of balance between comfort and control meant that the car was less adept at handling emergency situations, further compromising its overall safety profile. Number 6 first, let's begin by setting the scene for the Plymouth Horizon. Introduced in 1978, the Horizon was part of Chrysler's effort to compete in the growing compact car market, particularly in the face of rising fuel prices and increasing demand for smaller, more economical vehicles. The 1980 Plymouth Horizon, like its twin, the Chrysler Omni, was based on the Chrysler Horizon platform and was a front-wheel drive subcompact car. It was powered by a modest 1.7-liter engine, with an emphasis on fuel economy rather than performance or luxury. The Horizon quickly became popular for its affordable pricing and small footprint, which made it ideal for urban environments. However, beneath its unassuming exterior and cost-effective price tag, the 1980 Plymouth Horizon had significant safety shortcomings that would have severe consequences in the event of a crash. The Plymouth Horizon's primary appeal lay in its affordable price. As one of the cheapest cars on the market at the time, it catered to the needs of a large segment of consumers looking for basic transportation without breaking the bank. With a starting price of just over $4,000 in 1980, it provided an economical alternative to larger sedans or imported cars. However, when it comes to automotive safety, a cheap price tag often signals that automakers have cut costs in certain areas. In the Horizon's case, safety was one of those areas. The car was designed to meet the basic safety standards of the time, but this wasn't nearly enough to protect occupants in the event of a crash, especially in side-impact collisions. One of the most significant safety deficiencies in the 1980 Plymouth Horizon was its lack of side-impact protection. During this period, automakers had not yet implemented the modern safety features we take for granted today, such as side airbags or reinforced side structures. While the Horizon was equipped with basic lap belts and had single front airbags available on higher trims, it offered very little in terms of protection during a side-impact crash. Side impacts, while often not as frequent as front or rear collisions, can be particularly dangerous. The Horizon, with its compact size and relatively thin doors, did not have the type of reinforced door beams or side structure integrity that could withstand the force of an impact. When it came to side crashes, the Horizon offered little more than a thin metal shell protecting its passengers. In the event of a side-impact collision, particularly in situations involving higher-speed traffic or collisions with larger vehicles, the 1980 Plymouth Horizon would likely have seen significant damage to its structure. Without adequate side-impact reinforcement, the car's occupants were vulnerable to injury, especially in the torso and head areas, as there was limited protection from the intrusion of the other vehicle. Another major issue with the 1980 Plymouth Horizon was its inability to manage crash energy effectively. In modern vehicles, crash energy management systems are designed to distribute the forces of a collision throughout the vehicle's frame, thereby reducing the risk of injury to the occupants. These systems are critical in frontal and side impact crashes, as they help absorb the energy and prevent it from being transmitted directly to the passengers. Unfortunately, the Horizon's design lacked the advanced energy management systems that would later become common in newer vehicles. Its basic unibody construction did not have the sophisticated crumple zones or energy-absorbing materials that are present in modern cars. As a result, the forces generated by a crash were not absorbed as efficiently, leading to a higher risk of injury during an accident. Furthermore, the lack of side airbags, reinforced doors, or even side impact beams meant that the vehicle's design was not prepared to absorb lateral forces, making side crashes especially dangerous. In the event of a collision, the Horizon's lack of these features left its passengers more exposed to injury, particularly in comparison to cars from competing brands that had already integrated more advanced crash protection into their designs. Number 5. The AMC Eagle was introduced in 1980 as a sport utility sedan aimed at filling a gap in the market for a vehicle that could combine the comfort and features of a sedan with the off-road capability of a SUV. It was AMC's answer to the growing interest in more rugged, all-weather vehicles, designed to appeal to those who wanted something more capable than a standard sedan, but didn't quite need the bulk of a traditional SUV. One of the most unique aspects of the AMC Eagle was its standard all-wheel drive AWD, a feature that was ahead of its time and would not become common in passenger cars until decades later. This made the Eagle a trailblazer in terms of offering AWD in a sedan-like vehicle. It was available as both a coupe and a wagon, with the wagon variant being particularly popular for its utility and practicality. Despite these innovative features, the Eagle shared many of the same engineering issues as the AMC Concorde on which it was based. At the heart of the Eagle's innovation was its all-wheel drive system, which was one of the first of its kind to be offered in a passenger car in the US. This system provided power to all four wheels, improving the car's ability to handle slippery or rough conditions, such as snow, ice, and dirt roads. For drivers living in regions with harsh winters or challenging terrains, the Eagle presented an attractive alternative to traditional front-wheel or rear-wheel drive sedans. The AWD system was developed in collaboration with Spicer, a well-known manufacturer of drivetrain components, and was designed to provide power to the rear wheels while also engaging the front wheels when needed for extra traction. This made the AMC Eagle a capable performer in moderate off-road conditions, offering improved stability on wet or uneven roads. Despite this AWD innovation, however, the Eagle came with a host of drawbacks, particularly when it came to its safety features, handling, and overall design. The AMC Eagle was built on the AMC Concorde platform, which meant that many of the design flaws and safety deficiencies that plagued the Concorde were carried over into the Eagle. While the Concorde was not a terrible car by any means, it was already behind the times when it came to safety standards. One of the most significant shortcomings of the 1980 AMC Eagle was its lack of modern crash protection features. During this period, automakers were still in the process of integrating important safety innovations such as crumple zones, airbags, and side impact reinforcements. The Eagle, like its predecessor, lacked these modern safety features, leaving its occupants vulnerable in the event of a crash. The Eagle's basic unibody construction provided some structural integrity, but did not have the level of crumple zones or energy-absorbing materials that would become standard in later decades. The vehicle's safety cage was not designed with the same attention to impact safety that newer cars featured, and the lack of airbags meant that the Eagle relied solely on seatbelts for protection. In comparison to vehicles that were beginning to adopt dual airbags and reinforced side structures, the Eagle was woefully unprepared for serious collisions. Another major safety concern with the AMC Eagle was its top-heavy design. The Eagle was essentially a sedan with the raised height and stance of an off-road vehicle, and this combination made it more prone to rollovers than other vehicles of the time. The high ground clearance and rigid suspension necessary for off-road performance contributed to the vehicle's instability during sharp turns or sudden maneuvers. The Eagle's elevated height, while beneficial for rough terrain, created a higher center of gravity, which meant that in situations requiring sharp handling or emergency avoidance, the car was more likely to tip over compared to lower, more stable sedans. The design was especially prone to rollover accidents at highway speeds or in off-road conditions, putting its occupants at higher risk. While the AWD system in the AMC Eagle provided extra traction and was a useful feature in rough weather, the vehicle's top-heavy design created serious handling problems. Despite the AWD system's benefits, the Eagle still handled like a sedan, and the extra height from the raised suspension led to issues in cornering, braking, and stability. In sharp turns, the vehicle was prone to understeering or even oversteering, depending on the driving conditions. The high center of gravity compromised its ability to remain stable during aggressive driving or sudden changes in direction. The soft suspension, which helped the Eagle absorb bumps and rough roads, contributed to the vehicle's lack of sharp handling, further exacerbating its instability. Number 4. The Chrysler Cordoba was first introduced in 1975 as a luxury coupe aimed at attracting a more affluent market segment. Its initial marketing emphasized luxury features like rich interior materials, stylish exterior design, and comfort, a vehicle that combined sporty aesthetics with the comfort of a luxury sedan. By the end of the 1970s, the Cordoba had carved out a niche for itself in the personal luxury coupe market, alongside competitors like the Ford Thunderbird and Chevrolet Monte Carlo. However, by the 1980 model year, the Cordoba was beginning to show its age. Built on the same platform used in earlier models, it had become increasingly outdated both in terms of engineering and safety technology. Though the car still boasted luxury features, its drivability and safety had started to lag behind the competition, and by this time, it was clear that Chrysler's attempt to maintain its luxury coupe image was falling short. At the heart of the 1980 Chrysler Cordoba was the M-body platform, a structure that had been introduced in the mid-1970s and was used in a variety of Chrysler's sedans and coupes. While the platform was sturdy enough for the larger sedans of the time, it was quickly becoming obsolete as automakers began to adopt newer, more advanced platforms that were more fuel efficient and better suited to the demands of the late 1970s and early 1980s market. Despite its initial success as a luxury vehicle, the M-body platform was not optimized for luxury driving. The 1970s had seen a shift in automotive design towards smaller, more efficient cars. And by the early 1980s, the demand for larger cars like the Cordoba was waning. The aging platform was a major contributor to the Cordoba's soft handling and poor performance, which became increasingly apparent in comparison to the more modern luxury cars of the time. One of the most significant issues with the 1980 Chrysler Cordoba was its lack of modern safety features, particularly when it came to impact protection. While Chrysler had done its best to market the car as a luxury vehicle, safety had not kept pace with the technological advancements in other vehicles during the late 1970s and early 1980s. One of the most glaring safety deficiencies in the Cordoba was the absence of crumple zones and other modern crash protection features. By 1980, it had become clear that crumple zones, areas of a vehicle designed to absorb the energy from a crash and protect the occupants, were an essential feature for modern vehicles. Unfortunately, the Cordoba was built on an older platform that had not been designed with crash protection in mind. The lack of crumple zones meant that the vehicle was not optimized to absorb energy during a crash, putting its occupants at risk in the event of a collision. In addition to this, the Cordoba did not offer the side impact protection that was becoming standard in vehicles of the era. The soft interior materials and mild body construction did little to protect passengers in side collisions, and there was no significant energy-absorbing structure designed to protect them in the event of a side impact crash. The Cordoba was also lacking in basic safety technology that would have improved its crashworthiness. Airbags were still a few years away from being standard in most vehicles, but features such as headrests, adjustable seat belts, and reinforced door beams were increasingly becoming standard across the industry. The Cordoba's safety features were quite basic, offering little beyond lap belts for restraint. In terms of safety innovation, the Cordoba was lagging far behind competitors that were integrating better restraint systems and more robust safety features into their cars. While the Chrysler Cordoba was intended to offer a luxury driving experience, its soft handling and poor responsiveness made it ill-suited for emergency situations or sudden maneuvers. The suspension system in the 1980 Cordoba was designed for comfort rather than agility. The soft suspension allowed for a smooth ride over bumps and uneven surfaces, which was typical of the luxury coupe segment at the time. However, this comfort-oriented suspension compromised the car's handling abilities, especially when it came to emergency handling situations or high-speed cornering. The Cordoba's suspension was underwhelming when it came to stability and body roll. In sharp turns or quick maneuvers, the vehicle's soft suspension allowed the car to lean excessively, which made it feel less controlled during sudden changes in direction. The soft handling contributed to poor emergency response in situations where quick reflexes and stability were needed. Number 3, the Buick Century was part of GM's midsize car line and was marketed as an affordable family sedan that combined comfort with the reputation of the Buick nameplate. For the 1980 model year, the Century was part of the second generation, which was based on the A-body platform shared with other GM models like the Chevrolet Malibu and Pontiac Phoenix. The 1980 Buick Century was available in various configurations, including a sedan, coupe, and station wagon, and it was designed to cater to buyers looking for an affordable, practical car with a touch of luxury. However, while the Century may have delivered on comfort and reliability, it was out of step with the growing emphasis on safety in the automotive industry. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, increasing concern about vehicle safety was leading to the adoption of newer safety technologies, such as crumple zones, side impact protection, and improved restraint systems. Unfortunately, the 1980 Buick Century was not fully equipped to meet these new standards. The Buick Century was a large, heavy car compared to more compact or modernized vehicles of the era. While weight was traditionally seen as an advantage for larger cars, helping with stability and providing a smoother ride, it was not necessarily beneficial in terms of safety. The heavy body of the Century, while giving it a solid road presence, made it less effective at absorbing crash forces, particularly in side-impact collisions. One of the key issues with the 1980 Buick Century was its lack of side-impact protection. As cars became more advanced in terms of crashworthiness, automakers began designing vehicles with specific features to protect occupants in side-impact accidents. This included the development of side-impact beams in the doors and reinforced body structures that were able to absorb impact and prevent intrusion into the passenger cabin. The 1980 Buick Century did not incorporate these features to the same degree as newer models, and its heavy body was not designed to handle the stresses of a side-impact crash efficiently. In a side-impact scenario, the weight of the car could work against it, particularly in collisions with smaller or lighter vehicles. The lack of side airbags and other modern restraints meant that occupants in the Century would be at a higher risk of injury during side collisions, as the vehicle was not well equipped to absorb and redirect the forces of a side-impact crash. Another safety issue with the 1980 Buick Century was its limited use of crumple zones, which had become a standard in many newer vehicles by the early 1980s. Crumple zones are areas of a vehicle that are specifically designed to collapse in a controlled manner during a collision, thereby absorbing energy and preventing it from transferring directly to the passenger compartment. Unfortunately, the 1980 Buick Century was not engineered with modern crumple zones, and its heavy construction meant that much of the energy from a crash would be transferred directly to the car's rigid structure. In a front-end collision, the lack of crumple zones meant that the Century would not absorb impact as efficiently as newer vehicles. While the heavy construction of the car may have offered a sense of sturdiness, it also meant that the car's passengers were subjected to greater forces during a collision, increasing the likelihood of injury. The stiff body structure provided minimal energy dissipation, making the vehicle less crash-worthy than cars with more advanced designs. In addition to its heavy body and lack of side-impact protection, the 1980 Buick Century was also lacking in modern restraint systems. At the time, lap belts were standard, but shoulder belts, airbags, and other advanced restraint technologies were not universally available. While the 1980 Century did include lap belts for the front seats, the car lacked shoulder harnesses and any other safety features that could have provided additional protection during a collision. In the 1980 Buick Century, the seatbelt design was basic and did not include adjustable shoulder straps, which meant that the lap belt was often ineffective in preventing forward movement during a crash. Lap belts were standard, but their ability to restrain passengers in more severe impacts was limited, especially when the lack of a shoulder belt meant that occupants could be thrown around more easily in a collision. The lack of proper restraint technology made the Buick Century a less safe choice compared to vehicles that were offering improved seatbelt systems. By 1980, some cars were beginning to introduce airbags, a key safety feature that would become standard in later years. The Buick Century, however, did not come equipped with airbags or any form of active restraint technology to mitigate injury during a collision. Number 2. The Chevrolet Malibu, which had debuted in the 1960s as part of GM's A-body line, was an essential car for Chevrolet in the late 1970s and early 1980s. For the 1980 model year, the Malibu was a mid-size sedan available in coupe, sedan, and station wagon variants. The 1980 Malibu was positioned as a comfortable, family-friendly car that offered affordability and reliability, key attributes that many consumers sought at the time. However, while it was still a significant part of the Chevrolet lineup, the Malibu's underpinnings had not evolved significantly since the introduction of the A-body platform in the late 1960s, making it outdated in terms of both design and safety features by the time it reached the 1980s. In the context of the early 1980s, safety regulations were beginning to shift in favor of stricter crash standards. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, and other global regulators were beginning to push for better crashworthiness, but the 1980 Malibu was not fully aligned with these advancements. One of the primary issues with the 1980 Malibu was its reliance on the old GM body platform, a design that had originally been introduced for the 1964 model year. By the time of the 1980 Malibu, this platform was well past its prime, and its limitations were becoming increasingly apparent. One of the most important innovations in vehicle safety that had been widely adopted by the automotive industry in the 1970s and 1980s was the crumple zone. Crumple zones are designed to absorb and distribute the energy of a collision, preventing it from transferring directly to the passenger compartment. The idea is to deform in a controlled manner during a crash, which helps to protect the occupants by reducing impact forces. The 1980 Chevrolet Malibu, however, was not designed with energy-absorbing crumple zones in mind. While crumple zones had been incorporated into newer vehicle designs by other manufacturers, the Malibu's aging architecture did not feature this crucial safety technology. As a result, in the event of a front-end collision, the Malibu's rigid frame would absorb a significant portion of the impact force, leaving passengers at a higher risk of injury. The lack of crumple zones meant that the vehicle did not effectively dissipate crash energy, making it more dangerous for its occupants in a collision. Another critical safety shortcoming of the 1980 Malibu was its poor roof crush resistance. Roof crush resistance refers to a vehicle's ability to maintain the integrity of the passenger compartment during a rollover accident or when the vehicle is involved in a crash that results in the roof collapsing. The Malibu's design, based on an older platform, did not include the reinforced roof structures or the side impact protection necessary to protect occupants in the event of a rollover or roof crush accident. During a rollover, the roof of the Malibu could easily crush inward, potentially resulting in serious injury or even death for the occupants inside. By the early 1980s, many newer vehicles were already incorporating stronger roofs, reinforced pillars, and other structural enhancements to ensure better roof crush resistance. Unfortunately, the 1980 Malibu did not benefit from these updates and would have been at a disadvantage in rollover scenarios compared to other more modern vehicles. While safety features in the 1980 Chevrolet Malibu were relatively basic, the vehicle lacked several key restraint systems and technologies that were becoming standard in newer cars. These shortcomings contributed to the car's overall lack of crash protection. Another major drawback of the 1980 Malibu was its lack of airbags. By the early 1980s, automakers were beginning to test and introduce airbags, but the Malibu was not equipped with this life-saving technology. Airbags provide a cushioning effect that helps to reduce injury by slowing down the movement of the occupant's body during a collision. The 1980 Malibu did not offer airbags an option, and its lack of this feature made it far less safe than newer cars that had begun to incorporate airbag technology. Number 1, the Ford Pinto was introduced in 1970 as a compact car designed to compete with the growing demand for affordable and fuel-efficient vehicles in the wake of the 1973 oil crisis. Ford's goal was to produce an economical car that was easy to maintain and would appeal to the masses, especially those seeking a low-cost entry into the automotive world. With its simple design and compact size, the Pinto found a place in the market. However, over time, the Pinto became notorious for a series of safety concerns, the most serious of which revolved around its fuel tank design. These concerns became public in the mid-1970s, and although the car continued to sell, its reputation was forever tarnished by its vulnerability to fires and rear-end collisions. By 1980, the Pinto had largely been phased out in favor of newer models, but many of the earlier vehicles remained on the road, lingering in the marketplace. The most significant flaw in the 1970s Ford Pinto, and a key reason for its negative reputation, was the design of its fuel tank. The Pinto's fuel tank was located behind the rear axle, making it vulnerable in the event of a rear-end collision. This was a critical safety issue, as the tank was poorly protected and, in some cases, could rupture during even a moderate rear-end crash, potentially causing fuel leaks and resulting in fire. In the Pinto's original design, Ford engineers placed the fuel tank too close to the rear bumper and underneath the trunk, where it was susceptible to impact and collisions. During rear-end crashes, the tank could be punctured or crushed, leading to fuel leakage. This was especially problematic in low-speed accidents, where the rear end of the Pinto would crumple and cause the tank to rupture. The vehicle was also equipped with a plastic fuel tank, which was prone to puncturing in the event of a crash. This vulnerable placement of the fuel tank was not unique to the Pinto, but became a major point of contention due to the way the design was handled. There were alternatives to this design, but Ford continued with the setup, which would prove to be a costly decision in the long run. The primary risk associated with the fuel tank design was the fire hazard. When the tank was ruptured in a rear-end collision, fuel could leak and spill onto the car's hot exhaust system, causing it to ignite. This created a high risk of fire, often with tragic consequences. One of the most infamous incidents was the 1972 crash involving a Pinto, in which the fuel tank was punctured and the car burst into flames, killing several people. Reports and investigations revealed that the Pinto's design had made it highly susceptible to fires, and in some cases, even low-speed crashes resulted in fuel leaks and fire hazards. The Pinto's lack of safety features to mitigate these risks made it a dangerous car to drive, especially for consumers unaware of the issue. As news of these safety concerns spread, lawsuits and public outrage followed. In 1977, a class action lawsuit was filed against Ford, accusing the automaker of negligence and failing to adequately address the Pinto's design flaws. The public became increasingly aware of the fire risks, and the Pinto's reputation took a major hit. Ford's handling of the issue came under fire as well, with accusations that the company had been aware of the fuel tank vulnerabilities, but had failed to make necessary changes to the car's design. The 1978 NHTSA report investigating the Pinto's fuel tank design concluded that the Pinto was dangerously vulnerable to rear-end collisions. This led to the discontinuation of the Pinto in 1980, although some models continued to circulate as used cars in the market for several years. However, the Pinto's reputation for rear-end fire risk remained intact, even as newer models came to market. The Pinto scandal became one of the most infamous examples of automotive safety failure and remained a cautionary tale for both consumers and manufacturers alike. Although the Pinto was officially phased out in 1980, leftover models from earlier production years continued to circulate well into the early 1980s. Used Pintos could still be found on the road, and their safety issues remained a concern for owners and potential buyers. Even though Ford had discontinued the model, the lingering presence of the Pinto in the market meant that its reputation for safety issues was still very much alive. Used car buyers who chose to purchase a Pinto were potentially putting themselves at risk, especially if the vehicle had not been modified or updated with any safety improvements. The Pinto was still widely recognized as a dangerous car, and it became a symbol of the need for automakers to prioritize safety in the design of their vehicles.